How did I come to know God? Well, in November 2009 I had a young nephew who was in his early 20s. He died of a heart attack and I used to care for him. He died in Sydney and we had to take him back to Mount Isa, which cost the family like a lot of money because not many of the family work. So we had to tap into like our supers and take out personal loans. And by April the next year in 2010, uncle had passed away, and very similar stuff, a lot of travel involved by the family. And we just came back from that funeral here to Townsville, and my younger brother, who was 37, had actually committed suicide 2 days after we returned. During trying to organise his funeral, my young nephew, who was going to Ipswich Indigenous Church down there with the Salvos, he rang and asked whether a young pastor by the name of Joel Maxwell could come up with him and stay at home. And I said, oh, okay then. So they came up, and for about 4 days we were searching for an older brother who we hadn't seen for a little bit because he moves around. And when we did find him, he also looked like he was on his deathbed. So we took him to the hospital, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him because he couldn't talk, couldn't walk. And my sister, who was up from Gladstone, who also goes to church, we were all at the hospital, but they would only let one of us in the room with him. And I said, oh, well, I'll stay and you guys can go home. And she goes to church and she gave me a small Bible and said, oh, can you read Psalms to him while you're in there? And I said, oh, okay then. And when I went in the room, there was like 3 people on one side of the ward and another 3 on the other side. And I pulled out the Bible because I thought, oh, if my sister asks me, I'm not going to lie to say I haven't read it. So I started reading Psalms, and I got to Psalm 5, verses 1 to 3, and it spoke about not hearing God's voice, but when you wake up in the morning that you'll hear his voice. And as I read that, my older brother just sat straight up in the bed and said, oh, I can talk. And I'm like, oh man, that's amazing. So I had a niece who was sitting out in the car, so I went out there and I'm like, oh, check this out, you know, I read this here, and he started talking. And I rang the sister at home and she's like, oh, I knew that would work. She said, I can sleep now. So anyway, like we had young Joel Maxwell came up and they prayed for my brother who was in hospital, who didn't know, like the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with him or anything, and they said that they wouldn't know whether he'd walk again or whatever. Friday, Joel and them went and prayed for him. Sunday, they went back up, prayed again, and he actually walked out of the hospital that Sunday to come to church for the morning session. And we've seen a number of things happen over a short period of time where God had done, I had witnessed a lot of it. And I said to young Joel, I said, oh, can I give you a hug? You know, and I gave him a hug and I said, you know, thank you very much, because he'd actually helped us get some finance and that for the funeral, because we were sort of a bit far stretched from the funerals prior to that. And he said, oh, look, don't thank me, thank God. And there's like a light came on and said, well, you know, I want to get to know that God. And so I started attending church, and I found it very difficult coming at first because of all the historical stuff that happened with Aboriginal people. And like I felt quite comfortable, I suppose, with the church leaders, where I said, look, you know, do I have to leave my culture at the door, you know, to mature in my faith and that? And the church leaders here, they're just like amazing people, where they're like, no, 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 you don't have to do that. And they were honest, they didn't know all the answers. And they actually got me to go to Sydney to a Christ and Culture conference with combined Indigenous churches. And I've just matured in my faith so much over such a short period of time. And I think God has done a lot in my life, where before I'm a very private person, so I didn't disclose much to other people about any problems or whatever, whereas now I find the Bible has a lot of answers for me through the parables in the Bible and a lot of the readings in there. God spoke to me and he said, you know, you're going to be a soldier. So that's how I became a soldier, and it was just like really significant moments like that for me that sort of cemented it all for me. I still, like, I understand, like, we're human, we go through all the human emotions, but I just draw so much strength from God and through the Bible that You know, I know I'll be a soldier for the rest of my life. I hope to one day to be working for Salvation Army, and I can just see the close similarities. A lot of stuff that's happened in the Bible and the way they care for their families is very similar to how Aboriginal people are. And like, I've got a lot to learn. I'd like to meet more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders involved with Salvation Army, just to give me that bit of extra support and sharing their faith and stories.